Welcome to another message from history. The presidents of the United States and how that they have touched the world with their policies, with their minds, with their actions to this very day. The good, the bad, and the ugly among them. In Romans, the 13th chapter, we have a command of God through the Apostle Paul to the church at Rome. And Rome was a very judicial mindset, so to speak. And Paul's writing to them, and he's encouraging them. He said, "Let every person," in the 13th chapter in verse 1, "be subject to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except from God, and those which exist are established by God. Therefore he who resists authority has opposed the ordinance of God, and they who have opposed all will receive condemnation upon themselves. For the rulers are not a cause of fear for good behavior, but for evil." Do you want to have no fear of authority and do what is good, and you will have praise from the same? Or does the minister of God to you for good? But if you do what is evil, be afraid. For it does not bear the sword for nothing or in vain. The sword means capital punishment. For it is a minister of God, an avenger who brings wrath upon the one who practices evil. God set way back in Noah's time, he set government, human government. Human government is to protect people from people and from people from the government. That the government can become so sour and bad and evil that a real government, a legitimate government, is supposed to protect the people from itself also. Wherefore it is necessary to be in subjection, not only because of the wrath, but also for conscience sake. Lawbreakers should never have a good night's sleep. Villains and emissaries of evil should never have a good night's rest. They should be living in fear all the time. For because of this you also pay taxes, for rulers are servants of God, and devoting themselves to this very thing. Render all what is due to them, tax to whom tax is due, and custom to whom custom is due, fear to whom fear is due, and honor to whom honor is due also. These are scriptural foundations for government. Scriptural foundations. I read a book here a while back, and I refer to it occasionally. It is Rating America's Presidents by Robert Spencer. And I really enjoyed that book. I don't always agree with him in every way, but I have studied history all of my life. And I've studied political science all of my life. And sometimes he's a little off the beam on things, but very good in the long run. We're going to study about Thomas Jefferson. I just absolutely feel disarmed in some ways, trying to give you in a few short minutes something about Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson was one of the most hated men in America, and he's one of the most loved men. He was a genius. By the time he was 9 years old, he had already had a working knowledge of Latin, Greek, English, and French. At 9 years old. His father died Peter Jefferson when he was 14 years old. His father was a farmer and surveyor, a politician to some extent in his time. His mother was like royalty, very wealthy, from a very wealthy, renowned family. Thomas Jefferson was born on April the 13th, 1743. He died July the 4th, 1826. But in those years, from 1743 to 1826, there was a giant among men. A giant among men. Thomas Jefferson worked and studied at least 15 hours every day. And then he would study music and relax playing his violin. He married a widow that had one little child, John, with her husband. And her father was John Wales, a very rich farmer and tobacco farmer also. Martha Wales Skelton. She had married a man by the name of Berthurst Skelton, that she had one child with, John Skelton. The boy died before he was very old. He was 3 years old when he lived. She was a very well-educated woman, a graceful woman, something what we might call royalty. Her father, John Wales, had married 3 times. He married 3 white women, and he had some children, of course. But he had another wife that was half white and half black. Her name was Elizabeth or Betty Hemming. With her, he had 6 children. And these 6 children were 3/4 white and 1/4 black. One of those children would become, in all reality, Thomas Jefferson's wife. Thomas Jefferson, when he was married to Martha, had 6 children. Only 2 of those children grew up to adulthood. Thomas Jefferson had 6 children with Sally Hemming, and 5 of them lived to adulthood. Sally Hemming was 3/4 white. So her children with Thomas Jefferson would have been 7/8 white. They say Sally Hemming looked like a white woman. She could pass for a white woman. She was not, didn't have what we might call black features at all. And Sally Hemming was Martha Jefferson's half-sister. Now, her children that she had with Thomas Jefferson looked white. She had 6 of them, 5 of them lived. John Wales, 3 wives, which brought forth children. Most of them died except for Martha, and Martha died at 33 years old. But Martha had 7 children. She died within months after Martha, her last child, lived. Now, Elizabeth Hemming, if you want to call her that, or Elizabeth Wales, her children were Robert, James, Peter, Critta, Sally, and Thania Hemming. Now, he died also, and he had over 100 slaves, including 6 slaves which were his children. And all of this plus 1,100 acres went to Thomas Jefferson when he died. But also 40,000 or 4,000 pounds of debt went with it also. Some people say that he inherited 5,000, but many records show that he inherited 11,000 acres on this estate. Thomas Jefferson graduated from William and Mary College in Virginia. He was born in Virginia. He was a gigantic mind of the American Republic. Today, with our upside down thinking in America, our critical thinking, they're taking Thomas Jefferson's name off of all of the monuments, etc., along with Lincoln, which gave his life to free the slaves. Washington, which had slaves also, but I want you to understand, when Washington died, all his slaves were freed. Many of these slave owners were worried about how their slaves would react in a society without somebody feeding and clothing them. Thomas Jefferson, it is said, left a secret trust to Sally when he died, and his children with her. One of his children went right into white society and succeeded. Let me read to you some of the names of Thomas Jefferson's, and we don't know all their names, by the way. Of Sally Hemings' children. There were James, Eston, Madison, Harriet, and Beverly. Now Beverly passed for white in his society. He went on to pass for white. He was in different types of public service like his father was. Thomas Jefferson's wife died when she was 33, and he just wandered for months. He just absolutely, they said that no man ever loved a woman more than he loved his wife. And that she was a musician along with him. She played the harpsichord and the piano, and Thomas Jefferson played the violin. They say that she had such a wonderful demeanor and such a serving wife, and just absolutely complimented him in every way. Now, her half-sister, Sally, looked a lot like her. Sally Hemings, they say, could have passed for white also. She was three-quarter white. The first lady of the America as the president's wife was not Mrs. Obama. It was Sally Hemings Jefferson. Jefferson took a lot of heat because he loved this woman. You have to realize that there were more than just Thomas Jefferson that had black mistresses or wives. It was not legal to marry a black woman, or a white to marry a black woman, or husband, or a black to marry a white. It was not. This was not society. They couldn't do it. You understand that? They could not do it. Now, Thomas Jefferson kept her close by his side. They say that he had started having a marital relationship with her while he was in France. And she was 14 years old at that time. She came back from France to America, and she was free in France, by the way. There was no slavery in France. So she was a free person along with James. Her brother came there also, and Thomas Jefferson had him to be taught into a pastry cook. Now, Thomas Jefferson was planting corn. He was doing all kinds of things while he was over there. And evidently he fell in love with this young girl, his wife's half-sister. He could not show this openly. I want you to understand. He could not do this. It was not permitted. But he took care of her. She hadn't many privileges. She had a room real close to his room at his home. He took care of her. He loved his children. He educated his children. His children were carpenters, all kinds of stuff. Thomas Jefferson was everything. He was an architect, he was a lawyer, he was a diplomat. He was President of the United States, he was Vice President of the United States, he was the first Secretary of State of the United States. He was a founding father, he was a writer of the Declaration of Independence. And he was a great proponent of personal, individual rights. He championed free speech, and he championed the right to bear arms. Those are the two things that he demanded as amendments to the Constitution. He was in the Continental Congress. He was a farmer. He experimented. He had cattle. He made wine, cheeses of all sorts, all kinds of dishes. He was what we might call a Republican today, but also a Democrat in many ways. He believed in limited government, but he believed in the voice of the people. Now, if you remember right, during John Adams' tenure, when he was vice president with John Adams put the Alien Sedition Act in to where if anybody spoke against him, they went to jail. And we named all of those people, or many of those people, not all of them, that went to jail and were fined. The first thing that Thomas Jefferson did when he became president was to nullify all of that and to restore back to them their monies that had been fined and to turn them out of prison. He was vice president under John Adams. He wrote the Declaration of Independence, was on the Congressional Congress. The second Vice President of the United States, the first Secretary of State. He was the second United States Minister to France. He negotiated treaties. He was appointed to the Confederation Congress. The second Governor of Virginia. He was delegate to Virginia to the Continental Congress. He established the University of Virginia after he retired from being president. But he did a lot of things. Now let me tell you some of the things he said about this man because he loved a black woman. This is what he took. The first lady that was part black, 1/4 black, was not Michelle Obama. It was Sally Heming Jefferson. I'm sure if Thomas Jefferson lived in this day with this woman, he would have married her. He was 30 years older than she was. He was 44 and she was 14. Now that was not unusual. My great-great-great-grandfather, Smith Paul, married a young girl that was 14 years old also. And they had 8 children or 6 children also. This was not unusual. My great-grandfather married my great-grandmother, and she was 15 and he was 30-something. Twice her age. This was not unusual at this time. So get that out of your head. Sally Hemings was an adult as far as women were in that time. She was 14 years old. A lot of boys at 14 and 15 years old got married. My grandmother was 16. My great-grandmother was 15. And many of them were young in those days. Now, the 1800 campaign was extremely brutal when Thomas Jefferson was running for president. The Federalist Hartford Courant sounded the alarm about the consequences of electing the deist Thomas Jefferson as president. Now, by the way, Thomas Jefferson believed in God, but not as I believe in God. He believed that there was a deity up there that created things, but then it just happened. Things just evolved after that. He did not believe in the miracles of Jesus. He wrote what is called the Jefferson Bible. He went in the Bible all the way from Genesis through Revelation and took all the miracles out of it. Took all the miracles out of Jesus' life, took all the miracles out of Moses' hands, and everything else in the Old Testament, and just said, well, this is good ideas, good examples, but we don't believe in the miraculous parts of it. And there are many people that believe that today. He said if Thomas Jefferson is elected President of the United States, there will be murder, robbery, rape, adultery, incest, will be openly taught and common and practiced. The air will be rent with the cries of distress. The soil will be soaked with blood. The national black with crimes. A Federalist leaflet invoked the bloody excesses of the French Revolution, saying that he was in France when that happened over there. We're going to have the same thing over here. We're going to have another revolution. The Revolution of 1800, and that's what it was called too. If any serious man, looking back, allows this tyrant, this horrible, immoral man to become President of the United States, that if Jefferson is elected, the Jacobins get into authority, that those morals which protect our lives from the knife of the assassin, which guard the chastity of our wives and daughters from seduction and violence, defend our property from plunder and devastation, and shield our religion from contempt and profanation, will not it be trampled upon and exploded by this man, this horrible man? Jefferson supporters were in like unkind to Adams. Now, Thomas Jefferson, all the time he was President of the United States, he was living with Sally Heming and having children with her. But he was absolutely one of the greatest minds in the world. Now, if he wants to be set an example that this greatest man of all minds, one of the greatest men in America, was in love with a woman that was at least a quarter black, even though she looked like his wife that he loved so much, and she was her half sister, I cannot see that he might adore this girl that looked like his wife, and lavish love upon her. And yet he had to do it in silence. Yet the world wasn't silent about it. They knew what he was doing. They knew that he was having children by this girl. By his wife, actually. That could never be his wife. And what could he do for this woman? except when he died that he set all of his children free, and every one. That's the only thing he could do for them, and try to provide for them an inheritance. Now when James Hemming came back from France and became the cook in his home at Monticello, he demanded to be set free. Well, this is Thomas's brother-in-law, Thomas Jefferson's brother-in-law. He set him free. But he said, one stipulation, I want you to teach somebody else here to be a pastry cook for me, like you learned over there in France. And so we did, and he turned him loose, and he was free, and he went out and drank himself to death with alcoholism. That's what happened to James Hemmings. Or James Wales, actually. Because that was his father-in-law. Thomas Jefferson's father-in-law had a black wife, and Thomas Jefferson had a part black wife. John Wales' wife his black wife was only half black. She was half white also. And his children were three-quarter white, which was Sally Hemings and the others that I named. Now, what did Thomas Jefferson do for America? First of all, he gave us America, didn't he? He gave us America. He lectured, he fought with pen and ink and paper. He was one of the greatest minds of his time. He had a gigantic library, which later he sold to the United States government and became the initial foundation of the Congressional Library. In 1803, he purchased Louisiana from France. He purchased Louisiana from France. And in that purchase, he gave 3 cents an acre and about $340, or about $15 million of the day he gave for Louisiana Purchase, which now they're buying land here that doesn't really belong to them and selling land that doesn't really belong to them, because these were the American Indian lands. But see, we have all that problem too. Well, what did it all become? America. It went all the way to Canada, from Idaho all the way to Canada, from the Missouri all the way to the West Coast. It doubled the size of the United States, more than doubled it. He sent Meriwether Lewis and William Clark on an expedition to find out what's going on, and Maryland's family are the Clark family. What was her name? Mary Adeline Clark?
Adeline Clark.
What was her first name?
Adeline.
Adeline Clark was his sister, and that was one of Maryland's ancestors. They explored and they wrote down scientific things. William Clark was kind of the boss over the men, and the scientist of the group and the doctor was Meriwether Lewis. He also set forth the western expansion. We went out west through there. And you have to realize that in all of that, we have American Indians living in this ground. And when they went out on the Lewis and Clark Foundation, or expedition, they took medals with Thomas Jefferson and gave to the different leaders, and they were making treaties with them. He cut the budget of America, and he reduced the national debt. He believed in small government, and of course John Adams believed in a larger government. As the President of the United States, Thomas Jefferson tried in every way to remain true to his promises. Not very many presidents have done that. When he took office, the national debt was $83 million. 8 years later, it was $57 million. Almost cut it in over a third. And then he had problems with the Muslims. America was shipping, going back and forth through Africa, China, all over the place, and the what we call the Barbary War took place. Now, have you ever heard the term leathernecks? Leathernecks, that's the Marines. The reason why they are called leathernecks because it's the Marines that went over there and fought, and they won the war, by the way, against these Muslim pirates that were enacting jizya from these people. That's protection money. Jizya. From almost immediately when the United States became a state, or a country, the Berber, or the Barbary states of Algiers, Tunis, Tripoli, targeted the nation's ships. In 1784, Muslim pirates from neighboring Morocco captured American ship Betsy and took its crew hostage, demanding that the new nation pay tribute to avoid future such incidents, that jizya in Muslim terminology. Protection money to stay alive. America, as a newly independent little infant country, could not afford to go to war with the Barbary states. So they paid tribute. But once this tribute and treaty had been established with them, this protection money, the jihads, the Muslims, demand grew and grew and grew. In 1795, the payment to Algiers was nearly $1 million. It constituted 16% of our federal debt for expenditures for the year. In 1801, when the Bashaw of Tripoli demanded $220,000 up front and $25,000 each year from the United States, Jefferson said no. No. America was in a little better shape now. He said, I'll spend millions for defense, but not one penny for tribute. I'll pay millions for defense, but not 1 cent for tribute. He instead went into war, emerging victorious against the Barbary states in 1805, and again in the Second War of 1815, now later, when James Madison was president. The United States freed itself from bribery and paying tribute and established itself as a nation that should not be trifled with. He set forth a judicial review in February the 24th, 1803. Marbury versus Madison established the principle of judicial review, that is the idea that courts could find laws unconstitutional, and according to that, strike them down. He did his best, like George Washington, to fight against party disputes. George Washington said, if America becomes a nation of partyism, he said, we'll have nothing but destruction and fighting forever in America. It'll be like a banana republic, which it is today. He was opposed to prosecutions of people of what we might call opposing opinions. He believed in freedom of speech. Now, we know that France and England both started taking captive American ships. And one thing that Thomas Jefferson did, he didn't want to go to war with them, but he put an embargo. They couldn't buy American goods. Now, America was a little country, and by his embargo act, he actually hurt his country. Now, he set forth precedents in the amendments to the Constitution that we still have with us today. Some amendments to our Constitution have been withdrawn over the years because they were wrong to begin with. The prohibition in America caused nothing but crime and disruption in the whole United States. Of course, Franklin Roosevelt repealed that one. A man by the name of Cassius Clay, the original Cassius Clay, was a slave owner, but he treated his slaves like family, and this happened much back at that time. You heard the story of William Key and his owner, John Key, that had raised him in his house like a son. William Key voluntarily joined the Confederates Union and went out and fought with his master's sons and protected them. Then came out of the Civil War a very rich man because he was a veterinarian and he developed liniments and all kinds of stuff. He even worked on people. He worked. He was a doctor, so to speak. They called him Dr. William Key. Of course, he was freed. He was captured 6 times during the Civil War and was going to be executed, but every time he talked his way out of it and made money doing it. Brilliant man. He was the man that taught the horse to read and write. Quite a man. A famous man, a brilliant man. When he got out of the Civil War, he had made so much money doing all kinds of things that he went back to his master's plantation, and his master's plantation was in hock. I think it was $5,000. And he was about to be thrown off his own home. William Key bought it back and gave the deed back to his master, free. He loved him. You don't hear this openly many times. There were many slaves that wanted to be slaves. In the Bible, it says that a slave, if you're indentured to a man and you get your freedom, and if you don't want to leave, you have to go to the doorpost, pull your ear out, and they poked an awl through his ear, and that was a witness that he did not want to be set free. William Key was set free, but he always loved his master like his father. There were many brutal, vicious slave owners also. There were more American Indian slaves than there were ever black slaves in America. The American Indian slaves died of malaria. The black slaves were immune to malaria, and they lived. This one man, Cassius Clay, he had a slave that named his son Cassius Clay after him, and that son had a son named Cassius Clay, and that son had a son named Cassius Clay that changed his name to Muhammad Ali. One of the greatest boxers in American history came from this man that helped make the Alaskan Purchase from Russia. That was a Russian diplomat also. In America today, we have impeachment as a political tool. And it began also in Thomas Jefferson's time. Impeachment is not a political tool. It is something you do when you absolutely, there is no other way. There have been many presidents of the United States that should, or several, not many, but several presidents of the United States that should have been impeached and probably tried for treason and murder. Thomas Jefferson was not one of those. Thomas Jefferson left us a legacy in many ways. Now as we go through times of unrest, times of political war, so to speak, times when men don't want to, well, right now the Democratic Party doesn't want, you have to be retrained. Biden said, we have to retrain those Republicans. We have to what we might brainwash them, make them think differently. That sounded like John Adams, which was a tyrant, didn't it? Now, John Adams was an honest man and everything, but he was a tyrant in that he could not stand opposition or criticism. We stand in a time today of political turmoil, and America is the most divided, the most racist time in American history. It's the most racist time in American history. It's racism, 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 all the time. Every time they can fly the flag of racism, I'm not white, people. I'm 1/32 white. That's less than Sally Hemings was black, or a lot less. She was 3/4 white. Her children were 7/8 white. We live in a time that our schools are in turmoil. We don't even have people going to school half the time. We got the borders open. We got all kinds of problems. We got financial debt, unbelievable. We're in debt to China, just absolutely unbelievably. China is pulling political strings here like the mastermind, the puppeteer. America is becoming a second-rate nation. Thomas Jefferson, Theodore Roosevelt, Franklin Roosevelt made America a top-notch nation. Many Republicans and Democrats both have been a detriment to this nation. Today, we need to study history, or we're going to be fools and repeat it constantly. Should we go through another John Adams administration? We have the First and Second Amendment that Thomas Jefferson fought so hard to establish, and should we throw it out the window because of political whims? Thomas Jefferson wrote the Declaration of Independence. He was a Virginia state legislator and governor. He was a member of Congress, minister to France, secretary, the first Secretary of State, vice president twice. He fought and won the Barbary War. He made the Louisiana Purchase. He intended to annex Florida. He set forth the Lewis and Clark expedition. He established many American Indian policies. He established the University of Virginia. He made reconciliation with John Adams, and they conversed with each other until both of them died on the same day, July the 4th, 1826. The last words of John Adams was, "Does Jefferson live?" When he was dying. Does Jefferson live? They had signed the Declaration of Independence 50 years before that. Those men began to love each other. Those men began to set aside all political ideals and to learn to love each other in one nation and to learn to appreciate what the other had done. He wrote his autobiography. He had much to do with the society of America and the government of America today, a democracy, freedom of religion, and by the way, separation of church and state. Every colony in America was a church state, a church colony. You had to belong to that church and pay tithes to that church to live into that area. Thomas Jefferson helped put that down. He helped establish legitimate banks. In many ways, he spoke against slavery, even though he was a slave owner. He established American Philosophical Society. He was tremendous in linguistics, language. He helped encourage libraries. He sold his library to the United States government, as I said before, and it became the foundation of the Congressional Library. He invented many things. He was a great man of God. Not that he believed in the deity that we do, but he protected those that did believe. He was a great man used by God. Even though he did not believe in the same God we believe in, he believed in freedom of religion, separation of church and state, and don't forget that. That's a very important thing, because the world has got two giant monsters, Catholicism and Islam, that married the church to the state when they were in power. I hope that I've helped you understand this man a little bit. By no means that I cover his life. It would take volumes to cover his life. Now they're trying to run him down and denounce him as a slave owner, and he was married to a one-quarter black woman and had 6 children by her at least, and 5 of them lived. He provided for them. He risked his life and his reputation by being in love with one. And he's not the only one that was in Congress at that time that were living with black women. Let's be thankful for these men that gave their whole life. Thomas Jefferson gave his life for you. All of his life. Everything that he did, the inventions that he did, and the politics and the writing and the letters of freedom, of speech and of religion, you owe to Thomas Jefferson. I thank God for that man. And I hope you do. And help protect his reputation for what he was. He was an unusual man. A genius in his time and a legend in his own time. Our Father, we send this message out to glorify you and how that you've touched worlds with Romans the 13th chapter, how that you used Thomas Jefferson to give us the country that we have or had. Help us to protect it in your honor and his honor. And Father, thank you for the blessings of living in this free country as I grew up. Please forgive me where I failed you. And Father, please help me with this vertigo problem that I have. And help those out there, help support us. In Jesus' name we pray.